Foreign Minister Qing Gang outlines Beijing's policies towards the US and Taipei. Politburo Standing Committee member meets Hong Kong NPC delegation. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Foreign Minister Qing Gang today held his first major international press conference since taking up the post. The former ambassador to the US criticized Washington for suppressing Beijing. He added the US should stop interfering with Taiwan issues if they truly seek peace for the Taiwan Straits. During the week of the first session of the 14th National People's Congress, Foreign Minister Qing Gang today hosted the official press conference for China's foreign policy and external relations. On Sino-US relations, he said Washington is trying to suppress China. Qing took the example of the recent balloon saga and said it's clear the United States had overreacted. He said that shows the US acted with the presumption of guilt and abused military force while distorting the perception of China.
The United States talks a lot about following rules, but imagine two athletes competing in an Olympic race. If one athlete, instead of focusing on giving one's best, always tries to trip or even injure the other, that is not fair competition, but malicious confrontation and a foul.
The former China ambassador to the US said Washington's suppression will not prevent the rejuvenation of China, adding it should stop the two countries from being locked up in a zero-sum game. Qing said issues related to Taiwan are the first red line that should not be crossed when it comes to China-US relations. When asked about the possibility of conflict between the two sides over the Taiwan Strait, the Chinese foreign minister showed a copy of the Chinese constitution. Qing stressed that Taiwan is a part of China and that China will use its utmost efforts and reserve the option of taking all necessary means to pursue peaceful reunification.
Recently, some senior US officials have asserted that the Taiwan question is not an internal affair of China. We firmly oppose such absurd comments, and we will stay on high alert. Mishandling of the Taiwan question will shake the very foundation of China-US relations. If the US truly expects a peaceful Taiwan Strait, it should stop containing China by exploiting the Taiwan question and unequivocally oppose and forestall Taiwan independence.
Qing stressed that Taiwan issue is a matter for the Chinese people that should not be interfered by any other countries. Qing Gang also spoke on Beijing's relations with other countries and regions. He hailed China's relations with Russia, saying the more others try to destabilize ties, the stronger they will become. Nazvi Karim reports.
As Foreign Minister Qing Gang summarized China's relations with Russia, the message was clear to the rest of the world that Beijing would choose its allies as it pleased. Portraying a friendship that is in contrast to the West's relations with Russia, he said Beijing has forsaken a gang mentality approach and prefers a standalone partnership with Moscow that tolerates no interference nor exclusivity. The China-Russia relationship is based on non-alliance and non-confrontation, said Qin. It is not targeted at any third party and it is not a threat to any country, nor is it subject to any interference. He added that China and Russia have established a model partnership for major country relations. Some countries who are inclined to view China-Russia relations through the lens of Cold War alliances often see nothing but their own images, he said. With China and Russia working together, the world will have the driving force towards multipolarity, and global strategic balance and stability will be ensured, said Qin. Beijing has refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Qin suggested some countries benefit from the war. He said efforts to promote peace talks have been undermined, saying there appears to be an invisible hand pushing for the protraction and escalation of the conflict, using the Ukrainian crisis to serve certain geopolitical agendas. Meanwhile, Qin reiterated China's close ties with the European Union, hinting at the EU's need to act independently. China all along sees the EU as a comprehensive strategic partner, he said. We hope that with the hardships of the flames of war in Ukraine, Europe will truly realize strategic autonomy and long-term peace and stability. On Japan, Qin said Beijing seeks goodwill and friendship with Tokyo, but bilateral relations will only suffer if Japan wants to be part of a new Cold War to contain China. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
The Hong Kong delegation to the National People's Congress session in Beijing was received by Zhao Leji, a member of the Politburo Standing Committee of the central government today. Zhao described the coming 5 years as being significant for Hong Kong to progress to a new stage. Memo Singhai reports.
This morning, Zhao Leji, a Politburo Standing Committee member, received the Hong Kong NPC delegation at the Hong Kong Room at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Xia Baolong, Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office and Director of Beijing's Liaison Office in Hong Kong, Zheng Yansheng, were also presented at the one-hour-long meeting. After the meeting, the delegation's leader, Ma Fengguo, quoted Zhao Leji as saying the next 5 years are important for the city to progress to a new stage. Ma Zhao praised the work of the Hong Kong government, adding the deputies should continue to make contributions to the SAR's long-term prosperity and integration into the country's development. In addition, Zhao also advised the deputies to make the best use of their roles in several aspects, such as safeguarding national security, gathering patriotic forces to protect the city, and promoting the development of the Greater Bay Area. When asked about whether Zhao will manage the Hong Kong and Macau affairs in the coming 5 years, the deputies said they refused to make any predictions. Memo Singhai, TVB News.
Li Jianshu, chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, presented his last work report today. He mentioned the implementation of the national security law in Hong Kong has enabled the city to enter a new phase from chaos to governance, then to prosperity. The second plenary session of the 14th National People's Congress was held in the Great Hall of the People today. President Xi Jinping and other state leaders attended the session. Li Jianshu, chairman of the Standing Committee of the NPC, delivered his work report, saying a total of 47 legislations were passed. Li, who is stepping down, mentioned many items of legislations and decisions of the NPC that concerned Hong Kong, including the national security law, saying it has helped the city to obtain long-term prosperity and stability. A seventh suspect in connection with the murder of the former model Abby Choi has been arrested, this time on the mainland. The 29-year-old woman is said to be a female friend of Choi's ex-husband who tried to help him flee to China. The suspect was arrested on the mainland and handed over to Hong Kong police at Shenzhen Bay this afternoon before she was detained at Tin Shui Wai police station. She was then brought to the West Kowloon police headquarters and later her apartment for investigation. Meanwhile, Abby Choi's mother has filed a writ in a bid to stop the victim's ex-father-in-law, Kwong Kao, from selling a luxurious Kadoorie Hill property, Kadoorie. The 2,000 square feet flat was bought by Abby Choi in 2019 for $70 million. It's believed Kwong was named as the owner of the flat so that the buyer could avoid paying massive stamp duty. It's also understood that prior to the murder, Choi intended to sell the flat, but the two failed to reach a consensus. Overseas, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has asked a Parliament committee and a special investigator to launch a new investigation of foreign interference in Canada, following calls by the opposition party for a public inquiry into meddling by China. Beijing has repeatedly insisted such allegations are groundless and false. David Garrett reports.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced he will appoint a special investigator to decide whether there should be a public inquiry into reports of Chinese interference in Canada's elections. He also asked a Parliament National Security Committee to examine classified information on the election matter. Speaking on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, Trudeau said the investigation would include other nations.
We have long known, and an independent report confirmed it again last week, that the Chinese government and other regimes like Iran and Russia have attempted to interfere not just in our democracy, but in our country in general.
The investigator has not yet been named. Newspapers citing unidentified intelligence sources reported China preferred to see Trudeau's Liberals re-elected in 2021 and work to defeat Conservative politicians. Police are launching an investigation into how this information was leaked to news organisations in the first place. Opposition parties are demanding a full public inquiry. Trudeau says that is not necessary at this stage and believes his party was the rightful winner.
Today, all political leaders agree that the election outcomes in 2019 and in 2021 were not impacted by foreign interference.
Foreign Minister Qing Gang told Canada's Foreign Minister Melanie Joly that the allegations are baseless and false when the two met at a G20 meeting last week in India. David Garrett, TVB News.
According to a German newspaper, Germany's government is planning on forbidding telecoms operators from using certain components from Chinese companies Huawei and ZTE in their 5G networks. Citing government sources, the news outlet wrote that the ban could include components already built into the networks, requiring operators to remove and replace them. The German government, which is now in the midst of a broader re-evaluation of its relationship with China, did not comment. Critics of Huawei and ZTE claim that their close links to China's security services mean that embedding them in mobile networks could present a security risk. Huawei, ZTE and the Chinese government have repeatedly rejected these claims. Meanwhile, Denmark's defense ministry banned its employees from having video sharing app TikTok on their work phones as a cybersecurity measure. Still ahead on tonight's news. Tickets for longer high-speed rail routes go on sale. Director of Fire Services calls for more standalone fire detectors to save lives. 4 Americans kidnapped in Mexico, but it may be a case of mistaken identity. Welcome back to TVB News. Starting on Saturday, the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Rail Link will resume long-haul services to several stations in Guangdong Province. Tickets for rides on the high-speed rail until the 21st of this month are now available for purchase. Timothy Lee tells us more.
A month since the reopening of the Hong Kong mainland border, high-speed rail operations have resumed in phases. Beginning on Saturday, rides between the city and the stations of Chaoshan, Shantou, and Jiaoxingdong in Guangdong Province will once again be available. Passengers will also be able to reach 11 intermediate stations, including Shenzhen Pingshan, Puning, and Shanwei. At West Kowloon Station, high-speed rail tickets for the next 14 days are available for purchase. Many travelers noted their excitement for renewed access to the mainland, but some non-locals said they found it difficult to buy the tickets themselves.
As a foreigner who doesn't understand Chinese, I needed to ask my colleague to purchase a ticket for me. So alone it will have been actually quite difficult. We are very eager to go to China, you know. It's an important market for France and for French people, so we are very happy that China is reopening so that we can do business here.
Others found the overall experience much more positive.
I think they give us a help assistance service. Actually, they was really kind and nice. They assisted us because we have not the PCR, so they informed us to get the PCR very quickly.
Those who wish to purchase e-tickets can also access the China Railway 12306 online ticketing platform. Regarding cross-province trains, services will only be available next month, when passengers can board long-haul trains to locations such as Beijing, Tianjin, and Shanghai. The MTR has reminded passengers that they have to wear a mask when boarding the high-speed rail, in accordance to mainland regulations. Residents are also advised to pack some extra masks prior to the journey up north for their convenience. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The huge fire in Tsim Sha Tsui last week has led many to be concerned about fire safety in the city. Speaking on TVB's Straight Talk program, Director of Fire Services Andy Young said there were about 34,000 fire calls last year, mostly for domestic buildings. He said the most common cause of home fires is cooking.
Apart from the good housekeeping and the regular inspection, maintenance of your building, what we call the FSI, that is the fire services installations. And I think the installation of the standalone fire detector can help to improve the home fire safety.
Yang said electrical fault and careless handling of lighted smoking materials are also major causes of fire. He said standalone fire detectors can give early warnings to people, allowing them to escape before smoke fills up the escape route. Meanwhile, Yang said he's very proud of the search and rescue team that helped out during the Turkey earthquake after a 59-member team went for the mission. He said the team is able to respond at short notice and go for international missions within 10 hours. The 84-year-old driver suspected of injuring pedestrians after losing control of his taxi in North Point appeared at court for a mention hearing today. He was granted bail pending trial. The defendant, Abby Choi, arrived at the Eastern Magistracy earlier today on a charge of dangerous driving causing grievous bodily harm. The taxi driver is out on bail of $5,000 and was required to hand in his driving license and report weekly to the police. He was ordered not to leave the city or drive. On Sunday, Ngai was suspected of losing control of his taxi on Fortress Hill Road before slamming into 3 people. US and Mexican authorities said they were working to find 4 Americans who were kidnapped shortly after crossing the border. American officials say it may be a case of mistaken identity, and they are seeking the public's help in identifying the kidnappers. NBC has the story.
These photos, shared widely on social media, appear to show the kidnapping's aftermath. The FBI says the 4 Americans entered Matamoros, Mexico Friday in a white minivan with North Carolina license plates before armed gunmen opened fire and abducted them. A law enforcement official with knowledge of the matter tells NBC News this video depicts part of the kidnapping, appearing to show one woman walking on her own, forced into a white pickup truck. Armed men with bulletproof vests are then seen dragging other people into the vehicle.
We're closely following the assault and kidnapping of 4 U.S. citizens in Matamoros, Mexico. These sorts of attacks are unacceptable.
Authorities say a Mexican citizen was killed during the incident. A law enforcement official tells NBC News the Americans did not cross the border for any criminal purpose, and that this appears to be a case of mistaken identity. Today, Mexico's president said they'd entered the country to buy medicine, although U.S. officials have not confirmed that. The Mexican government We visited Matamoros to report on migrant tent camps for years, but violence there has escalated. The city of about 500,000 people just across the border from Brownsville, Texas, is home to warring factions of the Gulf drug cartel. The shootouts on Friday prompted the U.S. consulate to issue another security alert. Tonight, the FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for the safe return of the Americans.
And that's the news. Thanks for joining us.